Good day, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into today's story, I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for being here. It really means a lot to have you all joining me as we share those incredible African tales. If you are joining those stories and you want to hear even more, I would be so grateful if you could subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. That way, you will never miss an adventure. And together, we keep those stories alive for more people to discover. Alright, now that we are set, let's jump into the magics of today's tale. This one is going to be unforgettable. Today, I'm taking you on a journey through the shadows where ancient mystery and forgotten spirits await. Imagine a world where secrets lie hidden beneath the trees and legends roam under the place where the line between our world and the spirit realm is thin. Let's begin. In a distant land where the forest stretched endlessly beyond the reach of the sun, there was a village called Kofe, hidden deep within the forest, embraced. Kofe was a place of ancient customs where traditional were revealed and the spirits of the earth were worshipped in solemn ritual. The villagers believed in an unseen forces that ruled the natural world, forces that both feared and respected. But among them lived a girl who is neither feared nor respected. She was an Engima, a misery that couldn't comprehend. Her name was Zuri, and she was born with two heads. From the moment Zuri came into the world, the villagers knew she was different. Her first cry echoed through the air, and the midwives gasped when they saw her second head, small, frail nestle against the side of the main head. It had eyes that remained shut and a mouth that never spoke. But it was unmistakably a second face. The elders of the village gathered in the home of Zuri. Her parents, Kena and Mora, were there to discuss what this strange birth meant. The villager's most revered healer, an old woman named Mamaya, was summoned to examine the child. After hours of silence, contemplation, and careful observation, Mamaya finally spoke. This child is marked by the spirit. She bears a great burden, and her fate is tied to forces beyond our understanding. The second head is no more deformity. It's a sign, but whether it is a blessing or a curse, only time will reveal. Kena and Mora, though shaken by their healer's word, loved their daughter fearlessly. They raised Zuri with tenderness, shielding her from the harsh judgment of the village. But Zuri grew older. Her second head, which named Akili, began to take on more prominent role in her life. Though it never spoke loud, Zuri could hear its voice in her mind, a soft and steady whisper that guided her through the challenges of her childhood. Akili was her constant companion, her secret, confident, offering her wisdom beyond her years. But the villagers was no kind. As Zuri grew, so did the rumors. The villagers called her a cursed child, a bringer of misfortune. Children avoided her. Adults whispered behind her back, their eyes filled with suspicion. They blamed Zuri for everything that went wrong in the village. The failed crops, the sudden illness that swept through the village one summer, even the mysterious disappearance of a hunter who ventured far into the forest. Every misfortune, Zuri was a scapegoat. Despite the cruelty she faced, Zuri remained strong. Her parent love gave her solace, and Achilles' presence kept her grounded. But even they could not protect her from the growing resentment of the villagers. By the time she reached her teenage years, Zuri had learned to hide her second head beneath scarves and shawls covering Achilles' face so that they couldn't see it. She was on her way of blending it, though the whispers never truly stopped. One night, when Zuri was 16, a strange dream came to her. In the dream, she stood in the middle of the village square, surrounded by towering trees, and seemed to press in form of sight. The village was early silent and the air thick with an uncertain stillness as she looked around. She saw a figure standing at the edge of the forest just beyond the trees. The figure was tall, and in a shadow, its features obscured by darkness. Though she couldn't see his face, Zuri felt it gaze upon her, cold, piercing, and full male violence. Achilles' voice echoed in her mind stronger than ever before. He is watching us. He is coming for us. Zuri woke with a start, her heart pounding in her chest. She lay in the bed for a long time, listening to the sounds of the night. The rustle of the leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft murmurs of her parent in the next room. But the feeling of dread from the dream lingered as she couldn't shake the sense that something was terribly wrong. Over the next few weeks, the dreams becomes more frequent, each one more vivid than the last. Every time the dark figure was there, watching far from the edge of the forest, his presence a glowing threat, and every time Achilles' voice warned her of the danger that was approaching. Then the disappearance began. First, it was an animal. The chickens vanished from their cubs, goats were found missing from their pens, and even the village dogs, known for their fearless loyalty, disappeared without a trace. The villagers were alarmed, but they checked up to wild animals or thieves. But then, a villager, a young man named Kofi, vanished while out hunting. His friends found his bow and arrows near the forest edge, but there was no sign of Kofi himself. Panic spread through Kofi like wildfire. The villagers, already on edge, began pointing fingers. They spoke in hushed tones about dark forces lurking in the forest, about ancient curses, restless spirits, and as fear grew, so did the suspicions of Zuri grow. It's her, some people whispered. She is the one bringing this evil to us. That second head of hers is a curse. Zuri tried to avoid their stares, but the weight of their suspiciousness bore down to her. Achilles, sensing her distress, spoke to her more frequently. It's a voice, a steady presence in her mind. Stay strong, Zuri. Do not let the fear consume you. But the villagers' fear was not something she could ignore. One evening, as the sun dipped down the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, the elder summoned Zuri to the council hall. Her parents, their faces pale with worry, urged her to be cautious. But Zuri knew there was no avoiding confrontation. The council hall was filled with villagers when Zuri arrived. The elders seated in semicircle were grave in expressions. Chief Elder Kwame, a man known for his strength, stood at the center, his eyes fixed on Zuri. Young Zuri, he began, his voice heavy with authority. You have lived among us all your life. Though you are different, we have accepted you, despite the mark you bear. But now, strange things are happening in our village. The animals are disappearing, and the one of our own is vanished. We believe that the dark forces responsible for those events are connected to you. A murmur of agreement ripped through the crowd, and Zuri felt the weight of their collective gaze upon her. She swallowed hard, her heart racing. Akili's voice whispered in her mind, urging her to stay calm. I don't know why those things are happening, Zuri said, her voice steady despite her fear. But I have seen something in my dreams, a dark figure standing in the edge of the forest. He is watching me. I believe he is the one behind all of this. The villagers gasped and a wave of panic swept through the room. Chief Elder Kwame raised his hand, calling for silence. A dark figure? He asked, his voice laced with suspicion. And why should we believe that this figure is not the creation of your own making? Perhaps it is your second head that calls this evil to us. Zuri clenched her fist, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. I didn't ask for this, she said, her voice trembling with emotions. I did not ask to be born this way. The silence in the hall was defending finally. Chief Elder Kwame spoke again, his tone cold and final. Whether you ask for it or not, the fact remains that the evil is upon us. We cannot take it anymore. You must leave this village, Zuri, for the safety of all of us. Zuri's heart sank. She had known this moment would come, but it didn't make the pain any less sharp. Her parents rushed to her side, pleading with the elders to reconsider, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. The decision was made. Zuri had to leave. With the heavy heart, Zuri packed her belongings that night. Her parents hugged her tightly, tears streaming down their faces. But Zuri knew there was no turning back. She had to go. Akili's voice was calm, reassuring her as she stepped into the night. Do not fear, Zuri. This is not the end. It's the only beginning. And so, with nothing but small bag of belongings and steady whispers of Achilles to guide her, Zuri left the village of Kofe and ventured into the forest. The forest was dark and foreboding place, a dense canopy blocking out the moonlight and casting long shadows across the path. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and distant sound of animal rustling in the underbrush. Zuri walked for hours, her feet itching, but she could no longer stop, driving by force she couldn't fully understand. Akili was guiding her, its whispers growing more urgent as they dived deeper into the heart of the forest. We must find him, Akili, the one who watches us. He is the key to our problems. Zuri didn't know what Akili meant, but she trusted her second head. It had never lied to her before. As the night wore on, the trees seemed to close in around her, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The forest felt alive as if they were watching her, waiting for something to happen. Just as first light of the dawn began to break through the trees, Zuri stumbled upon a clearing. There stood a massive stone altar, ancient and withered, covered in strange carvings that seemed to writhe and twisted in the dawn's dim light. The altar was surrounded by tall, twisted trees, their bark blackened and gnarled as if burned by some ancient fire. Zuri felt a shiver run down her spine as she gazed at the scene, and Achilles' voice whispered urgent in her mind, "This is the place, Zuri, the place where his power is strongest." Zuri took a cautious step forward, her eyes scanning the clearing for any sign of movement. The silence was thick, almost oppressive, and even the birds seemed to have fallen quiet. Then, as she approached the altar, she saw the dark figure from her dreams. He stood at the far end of the clearing, cloaked in the shadows that seemed clinging to him, obscuring his features. Though she couldn't see his face clearly, Zuri could feel the gaze upon her, heavy cold. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as thought she was standing in the presence of something ancient and malevolent. The figure spoke his voice, a low rumbling whisper that seemed to echo through, declaring, "You have come, Zuri." Zuri's mouth went dry. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to remain calm. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Why have you been haunting me in my dreams?" The figure took a step forward. As he did, the shadow parted slightly, revealing a glimpse of his face. His skins were pale, almost ghostly, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. He looked both human and not, as if something darker lurked just beneath the surface. "I am the one who marked you," he said, his voice as cold as night. "I am the reason you were born with two heads. You were chosen, Zuri, to serve a greater purpose." Zuri felt a surge of anger rise within her. "I never asked for any of this," she spat. "I don't want to serve anyone." The figure laughed, a hallowing, chilling sound that seems to resonate through her bones. "Whether you want it or not is relevant. You were marked at birth, a vessel for the spirit that dwell in the shadows. That second head of yours, that voice you hear in your mind, it is part of me. Through it, I have watched you, guided you, protected you, but now the time has come for you to fulfill your purpose." Zuri's heart pounded in her chest. She glanced over her shoulder as if hoping for a way to escape, but there was none. Around the clearing, trapping her with this dark figure, Achilles' voice filled her mind, a whisper of defense. "Do not listen to him, Zuri. He is lying." The figure gazed narrowly, as thought he had heard Achilles' word. "Ah," the second head speak. He sneered. "Think you can defy me? I am the only one who created you, Akili. You are nothing more than an extension of my will, a fragment of my power." Zuri felt a surge of protectiveness for Akili, her constant were companion, the voice that had been with her since birth. She took a step forward, her fear replaced by a fierce determination. "You may have marked me, but I am not yours to control," she said, her voice steady. "Akili and I are one. We are stronger than you." The figure's eye blazed with anger, and the shadows around him seemed to pulse with dark energy. "You dare to defy me? You have no idea of the power I hold. I hold the forces I command. I could crush you with a single thought." Zuri stood her ground, her gaze unvarying. "Then why haven't you?" The figure flattered and flickered across his face. Zuri felt a surge of confidence. Perhaps he wasn't all that powerful as he claimed. Perhaps he needed her more than she realized. Akili's voice was calm and steady in her mind. "He cannot harm us, Zuri, not unless we let him." Zuri took a deep breath, drawing strength from Achilles' presence. She met the figure's gaze, her voice filled with defense. "You may have marked me, but I choose my own path. I will not be your pawn." The figure's face twisted with wrath, and he raised his hand, summoning a wave of shadow that surged towards her. Zuri braced herself, but as the darkness closed in, she felt a surge of energy from within, a warmth that radiated from Achilles' presence. The shadows shattered against an invisible barrier, dissipating into the air. The figure recoiled his face, a mask of shock and fury. "How are you doing this?" Zuri felt Achilles' strength flowing through her, a power she had never known she possessed. She stepped forward, her voice filled with a newfound confidence. "You may have marked me, but you have no control over me. I am stronger than you can even ever imagine." The figure let out a roar of rage, and the shadow around him writhed and twisted, forming a dark swelling. The air grew thick with malevolent energy, and Zuri felt the ground trembling beneath her feet, but she stood firm, drawing strength from Akili's presence. With a final defense shout, Zuri raised her hand, channeling the energy within her. A brilliant light erupted from her second head, Achilles' face glowing with an ethereal radiance. The light sent to the dark figure, and he let out a scream of agony as the shadow consumed him. His form disintegrated into the air. When the light faded, the clearing was silent once more. The dark figure was gone, and the oppressive weight of that he hung over the forest lifted, leaving behind a sense of peace. Zuri collapsed to her knees. Her strength, she felt like Achilles' voice and soft, comforting her in her mind. It is over. We are free. Zuri closed her eyes, a wave of relief wishing over her. She had faced her darkest fears and emerged victoriously, but she knew that her journey was far from this. She had discovered a power within herself that she had never known, a strength that went beyond her two hairs, and with Akili by her side, she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Within a final glance of the clearing, Zuri rose to her feet and walked back into the forest, ready to embrace the path that lay before her. As Zuri walked through the forest, a sense of calm settled over her, but she knew that what lay ahead could not be easy. She had freed herself from the dark figure's hold, but the mark he had placed on her since birth remained, bending her of her powers and were still unknown. With every step, the weight of her new understanding pressed down on her. Zuri realized that her connection with Akili was far deeper than she could ever imagine. Their bond had unlocked abilities within her she had yet to fulfill comprehensively. Achilles had always been the voice, a presence that guided her, but now it was clear that they shared something far greater, a power that could shape their destiny. As dawn broke over the horizon, Zuri saw the forest began to thin. She soon found herself at the edge of a small stream that sparkled in the early morning light. She knelt beside the water, catching her reflection, a young woman with a resilience in her eyes that hadn't been there before, and beside her, a face Achilles calm, scared in expression. Just then she heard voices coming from the other side of the stream. Zuri peered through the tree and spotted a small group of travelers resting by the water's edge. They looked like they had journeyed long and far, their clothes worn, their faces weary. For the moment, Zuri hesitated, unsure if she should approach. She had learned to be cautious of others. Most would see her two heads and label her an outcast or worse. But then Achilles whispered, they might be different, Zuri. Not all are like the villagers of Kofe. Trust yourself. Taking a deep breath, Zuri crossed the stream and approached the group. One of them, an older woman with silver streaked hair, looked up at Zuri. There was no fear in her gaze, only curiosity. The woman rose and met Zuri's eyes with soft and smile. Greetings, young traveler, the woman said, with bright so deep in the forest. Zuri paused, unsure how much to share, but something about the woman's gentle reassured her. She found herself speaking freely. She told them of her journey, her life in Kofe, the mysterious figure who had haunted her dreams, and the final battle she had waged in her dreams. The heart of the forest. She spoke to Akili and the strange powers they now shared, powers she was only beginning to understand just now. The group listened to Akili, and when she finished, the woman nodded. You bear a gift and burden, child, she said. Many would not understand, but we have traveled the lands and we have seen many wonders. You are what we called Dua, a dual soul. Your spirit is one of the both light and shadow bound to forces beyond the world. The woman gestures for Zuri to sit down with them and started introducing the others. A young warrior with a sharp eyes and gentle smile, Nia, a healer with warm hands and kind heart, and Kwasi, a traveler and a storyteller whose voice was rich and deep as earth. They shared tales of their own adventures, of land beyond coffee, and creatures that roam at night. As they spoke, Zuri felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. Rudo, the young warrior, looked at her with a mixture of awe and respect. We have heard legends of Dua, people gifted with dual spirits who can communicate with forces and others cannot see. Some say they are choosing to protect and balance the world. Nia the healer placed a gentle hand on Zuri's shoulder. Perhaps that is your purpose, Zuri. You were marked for the reason, but maybe your fate to bridge the gap between our world and the spirit, to bring harmony where there is discord. As Zuri listened to their words, something within her stirred. For the first time, her difference felt less like a curse and more like a calling. She realized that the journey she had embarked on was not simply about escaping her past or fleeing the dark figure's influence. It was about discovering who she truly was and who she was meant to be. In the days that followed, with the group learning how to share their knowledge, Kwese told her the ancient stories of their ancestors, tales of wisdom and courage that had been passed down through generations. Nia taught her healing techniques, showing her how to harness her inner energy to heal wounds and soothe pain. Rudo trained her in a combat, teaching her how to defend herself anytime danger arises. And then there was the night when Zuri felt the full strength of her powers for the first time. They were camped by a lake under a starry sky, the night air filled with the soft hum of insects. Zuri sat by the water edge, gazing at her reflection, and Aki's voice spoke to her, calm and steady. It's time, Zuri. Open your mind and heart to the energy around you. Feel the power within us. Zuri closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing, letting herself drift into the deep motivative state. She felt the earth beneath her, solid and grounding, the cold night air filling her lungs. She gently ripped off the lake, and then, slowly, she became aware of something more, an energy that pulsed within her, a warmth that flowed from her second head and spread throughout her body. As she sank deeper into the feeling, the world around her began to shift. She opened her eyes and gasped. The forest was alive with light, shimmering like stardust. Spirit dancing around her, figures of the light and shadow that moved with grace that was otherworldly. Some had the shape of animals, forces, birds, while others were like human, their forms fluid and overchanging. One of the spirits, a graceful figure with the head of a lion and wings of the eagle, approached her. It gazed her with eyes filled with wisdom and compassion, and when it spoke, its voice was like a song. You are a bridge, Zuri, a vessel of light and shadow. You were chosen to walk between worlds to protect the balance and bring peace where there is strife. Zuri felt a wave of understanding wash over her. She had been marked for a reason, not as a punishment, but as a gift, a duty to protect the harmony between the living and the spirit. She felt Achilles' presence stronger than ever, a warmth that filled her with courage and purpose. The spirit placed her hand on her shoulder, and as it did, Zuri felt a surge of energy, a connection to the world around her, and that was deeper than anything she had ever known. She understood that the powers were not meant to be hidden or feared. They were part of her, a gift to be used for a greater good. When she finally opened her eyes, the spirits were gone and dawn was breaking over the horizon. Her companions were waiting, their eyes filled with wonder. They had witnessed her transformation, the awakening of her true self. Zuri smiled, a feeling of peace and strength filling her heart. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her purpose, her place in the world, and was ready to embrace it. And so, with her friends by her side, Zuri set off on a new path, one that would lead her to adventures she could never have imagined. She was no longer the cursed girl with two hairs. She was Zuri, the Dua, the guardian of balance, a protector of worlds, and with Achilles' guidance, she would face wherever and whatever lay ahead of her with courage and strength. For she was destined to be a bright between ram and the light in the darkness of a warrior of the spirit. Zuri's journey took her to a new companions through dense jungle, across barren desert, and into the mountain range where the air grew thin and the storm seems too close enough to touch. Each step deeper, her connection to the world and the spirit realm. With Achilles' guidance, she began to understand the true nature of her power. Along the way, Zuri and her companions encouraged villagers where whispers and companions and dark forces had taken root. Crops had withered overnight, livestock had vanished, and strange symbols had been carved into the tree trunks and homes. The villagers were frightened, and when they saw Zuri's second head, some recoiled, but others looked to her in awe and hope. They had heard stories of two-headed girl who has powers beyond mortal understanding. Soon, tales of Zuri and her friends spread. They became known as the keepers of balance. One evening, as they approached a village perched along the edge of the wide shimmering lake, an elder named Abene welcomed them with reverence. The village had been plucked by a naughty visitation spirit that appeared at the water edge, weeping and wailing until dawn. Crops withered and children grew sick with fevers. The people were terrified, certain they were being punished by the spirit for unknown mislead. Abuna led them to the lake, where Zuri knelt by the water, dipping her hands into the cold of depth. She closed her eyes, letting the energy of the place flow through her, and Achilles' voice whispered in her mind, "There is sorrow here, Zuri, a deep, unyielding grief that bends the spirit." Zuri breathed deeply, allowing herself to sink into a trance, reaching out with her sense of the spirit realm. Slowly, the air grew thick and heavy, and the water surface ripped. She opened her eyes to see pale, ghostly figures rising from the lake, their faces twisted with sorrow. They were the spirits of a woman and children, and their eyes were filled with sadness. So they complained and asked Zuri to help them. Zuri's heart ached for them. She felt Achilles' strength within her, and with it she extended a hand towards the spirit. "Why do you linger here?" she asked gently, her voice carrying through the wind. "We were lost long ago. The lake was our home, but we were driven out, taken far away from our families. Our lives cut short by violence and fear, and we wandered ever since, seeking rest but finding none." Zuri felt the weight of their sorrows, the grief and depth it seems to press down on her chest. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy within her, the power of light and shadow that flowed through her veins. She called upon Akili, drawing from the bond they shared, and together they reached out to the spirit, offering them peace. "You no longer needed to wonder," Zuri said, her voice steady and compassionate. I will help you find the rest you seek. You are remembered, and your suffering is not forgotten. Let me guide you to a place where the spirit find peace. The spirit looked at her. Their faces softened one by one. They stepped forward, and Zuri held out their hands. They passed through her, each one leaving behind a faint warmth and spark of gratitude. The last spirit paused, her eyes meeting Zuri's with long looking deep and understanding. You carry a light that few possessed, the Spirit said softly. Your path will no longer challenge you, but you are not alone. With those words, the Spirit faded, and the lake surface grew still once more, the air lighter as if the great weight had been lifted. The villagers watched in awe as fears replaced by their hope. They thanked Zuri, their gratitude filling the air like a gentle breeze. Abner, the elder, offered Zuri a small carved amulet as a symbol of their appreciation, a token of protection and strength. Zuri accepted it with a smile, knowing that there was one of many in the village that would be touched by her journey. As Zuri and her companion she left the village, she felt a sense of fulfillment, but she also knew that each step forward would bring new challenges. Each places they visited, each spirit they encounter would test her resolve, her courage, and her compassion. One night, while they rested by the fire, Rudo turned to Zuri with thoughtful expression. You have done so much already, but I sense that you are searching for something even greater. Zuri nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. I think I'm searching for myself, Rudo. I spent so long feeling like an outcast, a curse, but with each spirit I helped, each village I visited, I'm learning that my power isn't something to fear. It is something to embrace, something to use for good. And I have Akili to thank him for that. Achilles' voice echoed in her mind, a steady, reassuring presence. We are one, Zuri. Together we are stronger than either of us alone. I am here always. Their journey continued, and in time, Zuri became more than just a healer or protector. She became a bright between worlds, a voice of compassion, and a force of balance. She learned to wield her powers with precision, calling upon light and shadow as needed, cleaning in wisdom and spirit and strength of her companion. Years passed and Zuri legend grew. She was known for her white and Dua, the one who walked between Ram. Villagers built shrines in her honor and in her name, and songs were sung for her bravery and compassion. Yet, despite the fame, Zuri remained humble, always remembering the lessons of her journey and the love of those who walked beside her. And as she grew older, Zuri knew that her story was just one of many. There would always be one mark of spirit others would carry and touch, guided by her legacy, for she had learned that her true strength was not in power alone, but unity and compassion, and the courage to face the darkness with an open heart. When Zuri finally returned to the village of Kofi many years later, she was greeted not as a cursed girl but as a hero, a legend, and she walked through the family's path. She felt a deep peace settle within her. She had found her place in the world, a place not defended by fear or rejection, but by love, purpose, and unbreakable bonds she shared with Akili. In the end, Zuri's story became a timeless tale passed down through the generations, and in a quiet moment, when moonlight cast a gentle glow upon the world, travelers will sometimes swear they saw a figure with two heads wandering between rams, watching over those who needed guidance. Forever a keeper of balance, a bridge between the worlds. Thanks for watching my videos. Please don't forget to subscribe and click to the notification bell.